Good Monday morning of the 10th week of Ordinary Times. Uh, this whole week, this is really a wisdom week. It's not just the second letter of Paul to the Corinthians, Paul's second letter to the Corinthians, but it's Matthew's gospel. And it is, in a sense, Matthew's version of Christ's transformation of the Mosaic law by the law of Christian faith. And remember, Matthew's writing to Jewish Christians, and he's not knocking the old order, he's transforming it. It's really a stroke of wisdom. You see this in the text all week long. I just read all of them just to get an idea how the week would unfold in all the text. 2 Corinthians always shows the body of Christ. We are the body of Christ, and so we share in his suffering because we possess his spirit. You see, we live the life of Christ, but we live it, and you read Matthew now, according, and I want to say the virtues of Christianity. You see, they don't reject the Mosaic laws, they transform it, but especially they don't reject it, as it were, the Ten Commandments. They radicalize them because the life of a Christian has to go beyond the Ten Commandments. It doesn't reject them. The Ten Commandments are the minimal conditions of human civility. You can't live without them. I mean, that's just minimal. The minimal conditions of human survivability, civility. How could you live without them, okay? You would live an uncivilized life, barbaric life. It wouldn't even be barbaric. Even barbarians have within them the code of ethics, and it's going to be quite similar, okay, if not identical. But Christianity demands far, far more. It's an active fidelity to life, to the communion of peoples, the church, to Christ, and Christ alive, the church. So you see far more. You have to live as a Christian, not just by the minimal conditions of civility, but by the wisdom of the cross. And that plays itself out in very specific Christian virtues. They are fundamental to the Christian life because they're imitatio Christi, they're the imitation of Christ. You see, not external. We have to live the Christ life. That's St. Paul. And we change the world through Christ and with Christ by the way we witness to the world and by the way we suffer in and with Christ. See, Christ never leaves the cross. Good Friday is eternal. That's why we celebrate it in the Eucharist. That's what we celebrate. Death and resurrection of Christ, the death of Christ. See? The bread and the wine, the body and blood of Christ. You see? Christ never leaves the never leaves Calvary, because the church fulfills those things wanting in his suffering. We fulfill them, not only in our suffering, and especially in our death, but we do it in the way we live. And the way we live is fundamental, you see, by those virtues. And I'll show it to you. The first reading, okay, I want to read the gospel, okay, Matthew. What do you think it is? It's the Beatitudes. These things are meant to be, I'm busting this book here. I'm clumsy. The Beatitudes are meant to be the Christianization of the Old Testament Ten Commandments. Christ is the new Moses, you see? Now watch, you could see it play out. Matthew's talking to Jewish Christians. They're not going to miss a single symbol here. Watch what he says. When Jesus saw the crowds, think Moses now, he went up the mountain. What did Moses? Go watch the movie, The Ten Commandments, Cecil B. DeMille's. Cast of Thousands, okay? You remember that stuff in the 50s? You got to be old for that stuff. I always think of that. I have to do Cast of Thousands. The Ten Commandments. Charlton Heston, yeah. Well, yeah, okay. Anyway, when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up the mountain, okay? Up the mountain. That's the new Moses. And after he had sat down, which is interesting, he sits down as a source of wisdom. The teacher didn't lecture. The teacher sat down among his disciples. Not the same as Moses. In that sense, Moses proclaimed. He stood above. I believe that anyway. Or my influence only by what I saw in the movie. I'm not joking now. That's the impression I have. Christ is a teacher. He sat down. Socrates sat with his people. You sit and you talk. That's what a teacher does. He shares. She shares. I find myself in my old age, be whatever it's worth, I don't stand at the blackboard anymore. And I come to class, I usually take a desk, one of the kids' desks, when the students turn it around, and I sit in it, and I talk to them. That's the role Christ is playing here. I don't know. I could never do it consciously. I just do it. But he sat down, you see. And his disciples came to him, and he began to teach them, not preach to them, teach them. And what does he give them? The transformative New Testament. What he's given them is the gospel of love. Okay? Not a commandments, other than the commandment to love. Watch what he says. There's the Beatitudes. Blessed are, you see? This is equivalent to Moses coming down with the law. But this is the law of love. It isn't definable. Watch what he says. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they who mourn. They'll be comforted. Blessed are the meek. They'll inherit the land. Blessed are they who hunger and thirst for righteousness. They'll be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful. They'll be shown mercy. The really powerful line. Blessed are the clean of heart. They'll see God. Blessed are the peacemakers. They'll be called children of God. Blessed are they who are persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when they insult you and persecute and utter every kind of evil against you falsely because of me. Think of the Jewish Christian in Jerusalem at that time. Okay? Rejoice and be glad, for your reward will be great in heaven. Thus they persecuted the prophets who were before you. You see? He doesn't give them, in a way, commandment in a strict, narrow sense, but a way of life. A way of life, a way of, in a sense, making a world peaceful, alive. See? I know I'm not exaggerating it. It's simply the bottom line. It's 5 o'clock in the morning. You can hear all the timing. You hear that? Yeah. I get antsy. This is actually Thursday, okay? 2 weeks ahead of time, but I get antsy, neurotically nervous that I'm not going to get these videos made. And so I start getting antsy toward the end of the week. And Thursday becomes the day sort of that I get started. That's what I'm doing, you see. So we just reminded me what time I got church and I leave for church in a half hour. And it was 5 o'clock in the morning, you see. But it's an interesting, I think the contrast between Matthew and Moses, okay, Jesus and Moses is important. It's not a rejection of Moses, it's a fulfillment of it, you see. We're not called, in a sense, to obedience of rules, but an obedience to Christ to love. Be loving members of the community. Shape the community through love, not servility. I think that's so important. As a young man, I grew up with such a legalistic mind. It took the order to break me of that, actually. My confessors. I owe more than I can ever say. In the secrecy of the confessional, where I would confess everything from trivia. They taught me to look even upon myself with the compassion of Christ. And I also, through the preaching of the cross, no passionist could ever be a legalist. We spend our entire religious lives contemplating the suffering of Christ and the cross, the love of God. See, I'm so grateful that I'm a passionist because I learned to see Christ, not see rules and laws, whether canonical or otherwise, but to see of suffering Christ who loved me and who loves me and whom I'm trying to love as best I can. By how? By loving the people that are in my life, personally and pastorally. Hopefully I preach Christ crucified to the parish. And I hope indirectly to my faculty and students. But I also, most of all, I hope I am a loving man, that I preach Christ crucified to the way I love the people God gave me. I hope so.